friends, and welcome to my first attempt at a knit and chat video. This is a video format, I guess, that I've seen recently on YouTube where crafters or whatever will just sit and knit for a bit and kind of talk about a topic of their choosing while they are crafting. And I really liked the idea of doing that because one of the things that's really important to me when it comes to podcasting and making videos is making sure that I never seem to be, how should I put it? I don't know, pressuring people into creating more than they are. There are a number of different podcasts that I watch where the knitters are prolific knitters, and they'll come back every couple of weeks with like 3 sweaters and a couple of socks, and they're constantly working on new things, and I think that's wonderful and it's amazing for some people. But for me, I find that level of, I don't know, creative production is a bit, I don't know, it almost stresses me out because it feels like there's almost that expectation that that is what it means to be a good knitting podcaster, if you will. And it's important to me that I don't do that as well. I hope that made some semblance of sense. I'm not sure if it did, but basically I really like the idea of just kind of casual knitting and chatting and talking about different topics of interest without having to have an array of finished objects to share with you. So that's what we're going to do today. I actually have a couple of different topics that I want to talk about. I have a lovely yarn haul that I'm going to be sharing with you. It's some of the first yarn that I've properly bought in a while, and I'm really excited to go over it. We're going to talk about some of my knitting plans, things that I'm planning to make with the yarn, and then I had another topic that I wanted to talk about, and it's about using like budget-friendly yarns and whatnot, and I don't know, I feel slightly nervous about it, and I'm not really exactly sure why. I think it's one of those things where when you feel strongly about something or have a opinion on something, there's always the fear that people are going to be unkind, and particularly when you're putting anything like that online, the fear that people are going to be unkind and rude and not, you know, value you and respect you as a person and allow you to have the right to have your own opinion. I think especially in today's day and age, it seems like the lashback for having an opinion on things can seem to be so violent and completely inappropriate in my mind. So I guess I do want to have a little bit of a disclaimer here at the beginning that any opinions expressed in this video are my opinions, and you know, please be kind. It doesn't take much to be kind, and it doesn't hurt anybody to, you know, not say unkind things. So if you disagree with me, that's absolutely fine, and I am totally fine with having a conversation and discussing it, but any sort of hateful comments or nasty things, they're not cool. And I won't put up with it. So that's the only little disclaimer here that I wanted to have at the beginning, just to say it's nothing political or anything ridiculous like that. It's just kind of an opinion that I have. And I kind of want to talk about it. I'm genuinely curious to know what other people think about it. So anyway, really quick, right now I am currently working on a sock. Oops. Just lost my stitch counter, or my row counter. There we go. I am working on the second sock for my Robin Hood socks. Not Robin Hood. My Robin socks, which is using a yarn by West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply in the Robin colorway. And I have just finished turning the heel, and I am working on the foot of the sock. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of these yarns, and then we're going to go into some discussions on some of the other things. I recently have purchased a decent amount of yarn for a number of different projects. I actually have a massive bag here. It is not all from Hobby Lobby. Keep dropping it everywhere. I was able to, I had an unexpected bonus from work, and I was able to spend some of it on kind of a fun little splurge to get something that I've been wanting for a very, very long time. I have been following and actually had a bunch of this yarn in my Etsy cart for months now, just kind of saving up and waiting until I'll be able to get it. And it was from Sun Yarn Studio on Etsy, and I will definitely link it down below. They have a lot of drops yarn, which is something that I've really, really wanted to try for quite some time. And so that's what I decided to kind of splurge on, and I was able to get a whole selection of colors. I'm not going to be able to hold them all up for you at once. And yeah, I'm just really, really, really excited to finally have all of these colors. There we go. I think this is kind of a good enough of a, I'm telling you, I keep throwing yarn, of a showing of what I got. I think that's, yeah, this is all of it. I'm not really going to go through each of the colors individually. What I'm planning to do, since there's so much of it here, I'm going to have a full list of all the colors and the code numbers and everything, and I will put it in the description box below. That way we won't be here all day talking about it. But yeah, I got a bunch of Drops Fable, which is it's classified as a superwash treated sock wool. So it's 75% wool and 25% polyamide, which so far has been my favorite blend of yarn to use for socks. I prefer just straight up wool over superwash merino. I feel like it wears better and the socks knit up better. So I grabbed 2 skeins of black and 2 skeins of gray because I wanted to make my husband some more socks. And so far I've been able to get about 1 pair of socks per 50 grams, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to get about 4 pairs of socks for my husband out of this, because he wears shorty socks. We both wear shorty socks like 90% of the time, so it works out really well when it comes to yarn. So I got black and gray. Put those over there. And then I've been kind of wanting to get some solid colors of sock yarn. For those of you who haven't watched my knitting podcast, I have a lot of hand-dyed yarn, my own hand-dyed yarn. I used to have a hand-dyed yarn company, and I have a lot of hand-dyed yarn left over. And so it's mostly like variegated, speckled, that sort of a thing. I don't have much in the way of solids, and there's a number of sock patterns that I would love to make, but I just don't really have solids, and I feel like the patterns that I want, the texture or the lace or whatever, wouldn't show up very well in a variegated yarn. So I grabbed these 4 colors, which are just so beautiful. They're kind of blowing out a little bit. They're more autumnal colored than that. So we've got kind of a rusty burnt orange. This one's a nice bright green without being neon, which I really like. This is a nice mustard, and then this is just a pretty aqua blue. And I really am so happy to have these, because not only do I kind of want to make socks, but if I have enough left over, I also really like the idea of using these for contrast, like heels, cuffs, and toes, like that sort of a thing. So yeah, I just need to get more solid sock yarn in my life. And then the last 2 that I picked up, I have been wanting this one in particular for a very long time. There is a picture on the Etsy listing of it worked up, and this particular colorway was called, I think, Blue Sea, and it just looked so beautiful, and I've been wanting it for ages, so I'm super happy to have that one. And this is another self-patterning sock yarn, which I'm, again, very excited to knit up and see how that works up. And I think, I can't remember off the top of my head what this one was called, if it was Candy or something. Again, I will have the full list of all of the different colors and their names and the numbers and all of that down below. So that was what I purchased from Sun Yarn Studio. I pulled the sticker off of the packaging because I want to stick it in my journal. And yeah, it was a splendid experience. It's kind of interesting because this yarn actually came from like Lithuania or something, and it was really inexpensive, which I was so happy about. And it only took about, I think, like 10 days or less for it all to get here, which is phenomenal for it having to come from so far away. And it was, again, it was very inexpensive. I think some of these were $4 and a little bit. I think a couple of them were like, I think this rust orange one for some reason was like $2 and something cents. Most of them were like $3.50, somewhere in that range. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how much. But it's so nice because this is exactly the type of yarn that I want to work with. And unlike with like Patton's Croy, which is a yarn that I can typically get locally to me from big box stores, and they're like $8 for a 50-gram ball. It was so nice to be able to get this much sock yarn in all these beautiful colors for so inexpensively. So I highly, highly recommend that if you are in America to check out Sun Yarn Studio, because they have a bunch of different kinds of drops yarn, and I definitely want to purchase more yarn from them because again, it was so inexpensive, and they had, if you met a threshold, which was either like $35 or $40, they free shipping, which is amazing. Oh, I have to drink so much water. I'm currently about 7 months pregnant, almost 7 months pregnant, something like that, I don't know. And goodness, the amount of water that you need to drink, even more so than normal. And normally I'm a person that stays pretty hydrated, but I get dry mouth all the time now. I'm just so thirsty. But yeah, so that was what I got from that place. And then here recently, my Joann Fabrics had a sale on their big twist yarn where you were able to get 2 of them for $5, which was really nice because as I am expecting a baby, a little baby boy, I want to make him some blankets and such. And so I was watching Leslie Friend of A Friend to Knit With, her knitting podcast, and she was talking about how she was making a baby blanket as a gift for somebody. And she mentioned that she was using this yarn and that she really loved it because it's such a workhorse of a yarn. It's 100% acrylic and it's machine washable. You can chuck it into the dryer, like it's fine. Like you can just wash it in or I guess it says do not tumble dry. But you can just throw it in the washing machine. I can't remember if she said that you could put it in the dryer too. I don't know. But she also was planning to put out the pattern, and I just checked today and it is now available on Ravelry. I think she has a coupon code if you follow her on YouTube that you can actually get the pattern free for the next week or so, I think, which is amazing. And I'm so excited to knit this for my baby. I think it's going to be just the loveliest thing ever. I've had this for about a week now, and I've been planning it for a while since I saw her episode because I really liked the blanket. It looks really simple and basic, and I love the fact that it was just made out of a real workhorse of acrylic yarns, because if you know anything about babies, they can be kind of rough on things without even trying to. You know, they're babies, they don't do that much. But yeah, so I was so pleased to be able to pick this up because it was like right after that video came out that Joann's announced they were going to be having this sale, and so I was very excited about it. And I got this. This is the Big Twist Value Yarn. Can't quite see what I'm showing you. There we go. And it is the colorway Dark Teal, which I really like. It's a very like kind of muted bluish color, and I think it's going to be so lovely. So I'm very excited. I'm so happy that that pattern came out today. I think it's called the Butterfly Friend Blanket or something. I'll put it up here on the screen, and I'll definitely link it down below. But yeah, I'm really excited to get started on this. I've been waiting for a few weeks now. Then the next yarn that I'm going to talk about is Oh, it's another one that I was able to purchase with my bonus from work, and it's a yarn from a company that I've been wanting to try out for years, and I'm just so happy that I'm able to have it now. I am actually going to be doing a test knit for Hannah Graham. She has the Hannah G Knits podcast here on YouTube that she just started, which I am so happy about. And she designs beautiful, practical little children's patterns, and she is in the process of designing I think it's called Ollie's sweatshirt pattern. And it is exactly the type of sweater pattern that I have been looking for to knit for my baby. Once I found out I was pregnant, obviously, as a knitter, as somebody who sews and crochets and does all of the crafting things, I kind of immediately started looking and researching and trying to find patterns that I would want to make for my baby. And I don't know, I've had such a hard time finding patterns that I really, really like the look of. I like a lot of the petite knit patterns, but the thing that frustrates me with her patterns is that she has like a baby pattern, and then she has a children's pattern, and then she has an adult's pattern. And it really frustrates me that the baby and the children's aren't combined. I don't know, it kind of annoys me that you have to pay the full pattern amount for both size ranges. And yeah, I know, I'm sure that's something that a lot of people would disagree with, but it kind of frustrates me because her patterns aren't the cheapest patterns out there, and I am totally willing to pay for that. I know how much hard work goes into knitting patterns, but especially for something where it's like for babies that they're not going to wear it that long. I don't know, it bothers me. Let's just put it that way. I have purchased some of her children's patterns, but it's just, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, but well, that's not exactly it. It kind of frustrates me a little bit that they're not combined, because the baby pattern doesn't even have that many different sizes in it. I think it only goes up to like 1 to 2 years, so it's really only for the first year of the baby's life, and then the children's pattern goes all the way from like 1 to 2 years to like 10 or something like that. And so it just doesn't make sense to me why the two aren't combined, but that's a completely separate rant. One of the things that I absolutely, absolutely love about Hannah Graham is that she specifically mentioned that for her patterns, it's an important thing for her to have all of the children's sizes under one pattern. And she talked about that in one of her podcasts, and I was just like, okay, I'm not the only one. So I was so thrilled that I was able to get in on her test knit for the Ollie's sweatshirt, because it was exactly the sort of basic, simple, like everyday sort of a sweater that I wanted to knit for my baby. And so I picked up the wool, the yarn that she designed it in, and it's the Good Wool by Pearl Soho. It's 100% Andean Highland wool, and it's a sport weight yarn, and it is absolutely beautiful. I just love the variegation of color in here. Again, it's blowing out just a little bit. It's a little more muted, but I just love it so much. I'm so excited to actually work with it. I actually have one of the skein caked up and ready to go. I haven't started the test knit yet. I went ahead and Pearl Soho was having a sale, so I went ahead and purchased enough yarn to knit my baby a sweater and most likely to knit myself a sweater. So I'm very excited about that. And this is in the colorway Teal Twilight. Yeah, so I'm super happy to have this in my stash. Hopefully it won't stay there for too long, because I want to work with it. And it's a little bit rustic, but still very, very soft. It's more rustic than a merino yarn, but I'm so excited to be able to work with this yarn. Again, it's something that I've wanted to work with for years and years, and yeah, I'm super pleased to have it. I have about 4 skeins, I think, of it. My baby is due in August, and so he's gonna be right at the beginning of like fall time. So I am planning to knit like just the baby size of the sweater, because hopefully he should be able to wear it for the next 2-3 months or something, and that's fine. So there's that one. And then all the rest of the yarn that I have did come from Hobby Lobby. And I popped in there specifically because I wanted to get some yarn to make some toys. And there's a couple of different toy patterns that I specifically want to make. One of which is this adorable, if you're not familiar with the Calvin and Hobbes comic strip by Bill Watterson, phenomenal. Absolutely love it. Both my family and my husband's family absolutely loved it growing up and everything. And, whoops, I found a crochet pattern for making a crocheted Hobbes, and I just knew that that was something that I needed to make for my baby because, again, it was something that it was a really special thing for both my husband and I growing up and whatnot, that we read all of those and really enjoyed them. And so I don't remember the designer's name. I'll put a picture and put the name on here and link it below. But yeah, so I went to Hobby Lobby with the intent of getting yarn to make that pattern. And I picked up these 4 balls of just 100% acrylic yarn. It's the Soft and Sleek Low Pill Fiber. I got it in this cream colorway. I got a dark charcoal gray, a rusty orange, because obviously for a tiger, and then a black. Now for the Hobbes pattern, I will actually only need the cream, the orange, and the black, but I went ahead and grabbed this gray yarn because another pattern of a toy that I really want to make is the mole by, is it Julie of Little Cotton Rabbits? I think that's who it is. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself. But she just recently released a stuffed little mole pattern, and I love all of her patterns. They all look so, so good. But then I'm on her newsletter, and she posted about, or I follow her blog by email, one of those two. She posted about she was in the process of designing this little mole, and I was so excited. Again, if you watch my knitting podcast, you'll know that I absolutely love the Redwall series by Brian Jakes, and I love all the little woodland animals that are in there, and so I want to make both her mole and the badger that she has. I'll pop pictures up here. They are so, so, so cute. And so I know that she uses, I think, like a nicer wool yarn for these toys, but since I haven't made any yet, I wanted to just kind of start off with kind of low stakes, if you will, and just use some acrylic yarn. So these are all worsted weights, and I am so excited to be able to start working on those because they are so cute. And I have wanted to make one of her patterns for quite some time now. I just haven't gotten around to it. But now that I'm having a baby, whoops, it gives me a really, really good excuse to make little toys. And then when I was at Hobby Lobby, I don't know if they're just kind of cycling through their stock of yarns or what it is, but they had a ton of their yarns on like clearance sale. So I was able to pick up 2 balls of patent Crochet yarn. We've got this one, which is in the mid-century stripes, and this one, which is in just magic stripes is what it calls it. And I love that it has just the blues and grays and blacks and greens and, yeah, purples. I think it's going to make a really cute pair of socks. And then this one is one that I've wanted for a while. But again, when they're $8 for a ball of yarn, it's really hard to justify it. At least for me, for my budget. So there's that. And then the last bit of yarn that I got also leads in really well to the other topic that I wanted to talk about. And this was, again, some yarn that was on clearance. I wasn't planning to get it, but then it was there and it just came home with me. It's the Cotton et Lin, which is a cotton and linen blend in the colorway Mauve. It's 80% cotton, 20% linen, and it's like a DK worsted weight. And I purchased this because I have been watching for a very long time and waiting for Laura of Penrose Knits to release the Summer Souffle pattern. I really like the souffle patterns that she's designed, but I had no interest in knitting a mohair version or a chunky version. And so when she published or whatever, put it out that she was planning to release the Summer Souffle edition, which is just a kind of DK version of the pattern, I was very, very excited because I was like, okay, finally, this is one that I actually would knit and I would wear. And so it just came out this last week. I bought it immediately. I was sitting there waiting because there's a time difference between here and the UK where Laura lives, and so I was just waiting and waiting for the clock to kind of tick over midnight in the UK, which is about 6 o'clock here in the evening, for it to pop up so I could purchase it. So I bought it within like 5-10 minutes of the pattern being released because that's how much I've been waiting for it to come out. And so I was really happy. These were all on clearance sale for about $1.24. So I got 4 balls of them. Hopefully I have enough. Because there's, let me see, it's 180 yards for 100 grams. And so I calculated it up, and I think that that should be enough to knit the Summer Souffle. The Summer Souffle is designed and knit out of the Knitting for Olive cotton merino or something. It's like a 50% merino wool, 50% cotton blend, which is a fingering weight that's then held together. So I'm pretty sure I have enough yarn, hopefully. But yeah, so that leads me into the discussion that I wanted to talk about, which involves budget-friendly yarns. So something that I have realized here recently is that there are certain aspects of, I guess you could say, crafting or causes that are really, really important to certain people. There are different criteria when it comes to patterns that really matter to people. And one of the big buzzwords that you'll see in the knitting community at the moment is size inclusivity. And this is something that a couple of podcasters that I've seen, particularly Laura of Penrose Knits and Rebecca of the Crochet podcast, they are very, very vocal about how important size inclusivity in patterns is for them. And it's something that I kind of mulled over and was thinking about, and I realized recently that that's kind of their, I don't know exactly how you want to describe it, their cause. That's something that's very important to them. And it's not so important to me. It's not a high determining factor in whether or not I will knit a pattern. And for a while I was kind of feeling a little guilty about that because I was like, well, is that just me being unkind and not caring? And it's not. It's not that. There's a number of different reasons that go into it that it's just not that important to me. But I also just realized that it's not my cause. It's not my, I don't know how you want to call it, it's not my thing to champion. And I think that there are plenty of knitters and people out there that this is a very, very important topic for them. But I realized that for me, something that is important to me, that does matter to me, is making patterns accessible to more people based on the yarns that are used in the pattern. And so what I mean by that is it has seemed that recently there have been so many of these lovely patterns that have been published and released, and I really like the designs, but they're all designed to be knit with a strand of fingering weight yarn and a strand of merino. And usually it's not merino, mohair. That's what it is. A strand of fingering weight yarn of some type of wool and then a strand of mohair. And it really frustrates me because, I don't know, the yarn, because I will look up that yarn and I will see how much it costs, and a lot of times it's anywhere from, you know, $8 to $15 per skein of each of those kinds of yarn. So when you add up all of that yarn that you will need to make this particular pattern, it ends up being incredibly expensive, like mind-bogglingly expensive. And that really frustrates me because most of the designers that make these patterns don't have any other suggested alternative yarns that would be a good swap out for their combination yarns. And I'm thinking particularly like petite knit patterns. I love her pattern designs so much. I want to buy so many of them. But they're all made with multiple different yarns held together, or with yarns that are only specifically available where she lives, which I totally understand. Like, you use what you have around you. And it frustrates me that designers don't offer an alternative budget-friendly yarn so that people who, you know, can't afford to buy this very, very expensive mohair and such, that they have an option that's very easy to go, oh, okay, I can use this one, or this gives me a better idea of what a good substitute would be. Because usually when it's the fingering weight and the mohair, it's classified as being a DK weight yarn. And so if they would put something in there saying I used these two yarns held together, but this DK weight yarn is a good substitute, that gives you a place to look at it and go, okay, this DK weight yarn works, so what is a similar DK weight yarn that I can access that would work for me? And so it's one of those things that it's just, I don't know, I realize that that's kind of more where my my cause, if you will, is that I really, really want patterns to be accessible based off of the yarn that they're knit in. It's just, I don't know, it's important to me. I think it's just because of my background and the fact that I have a very limited budget. Like, I don't have money to just go out and buy, oh goodness, I'll see podcasters talking about how they've bought 6 skeins of hand-dyed yarn, and in my brain I'm just going, that is so much money. That is so much money that has just been spent on yarn that, like, I could never justify doing that. And yeah, it blows my mind. And I think it's amazing that people have the ability and the budget to be able to do that, but not everybody does. And so it's just something that I've been kind of mulling over and thinking about here recently, that's something that's really important to me. And I really, really appreciate it when a designer has alternative yarns listed in the pattern, or when designers design patterns in inexpensive yarns. I think that's amazing. One of the ladies that I follow online, Emily of the Blue Mouse Knits, she's recently been releasing a bunch of different sort of free patterns, all in incredibly budget-friendly yarns. And I really like that. I really appreciate that so, so much. I think that it's just an amazing thing to do, because it means that more people can knit. More people can have access to these patterns and be able to knit them without feeling like they have to splurge for the expensive yarns. So, I hope that all kind of made sense. No, I guess you could say bashing of any particular person or whatever, or company or anything like that. Nothing like that is intended. Like, I love all of these people that I've mentioned. I think that they're all amazing and everything. It's just kind of something that I've been thinking about here recently, and I'm really curious to know what you guys think about it. But that is one of those things that, when the Summer Souffle was released, it's knit in the, like I said, the Knitting for Olive, I think cotton merino or something. And for me, to access that, it's, I think when I calculated it up, it would have been almost $100 worth of yarn for me to make that sweater. And I just thought to myself, that is ridiculous. Not gonna lie, I would love to get my hands on some Knitting for Olive yarn. Like, I think that that would be amazing, but I just cannot justify having to buy that much yarn to make a sweater. I wouldn't pay $100 for a sweater that's already made. Like, I wouldn't pay that much for clothes. And that's just, it's a lot of that is from my background. I grew up very much shopping in thrift stores. My family was not very, we did not have a lot of money. And so it's something that I learned very early on to just buy secondhand. You go to the thrift store. I returned shirts to Walmart recently because they were $15, and that just seems so much. I went to Goodwill instead and bought a couple of different shirts that were $5 a piece, because that's just the way that my brain works. And so I wouldn't say that I would never buy that expensive of yarn for a sweater, because I do think that there is something to say for the experience of using a very nice, very expensive yarn for a sweater. I'm sure that those sweaters are absolutely amazing and beautiful to both knit and wear, but at least right now, that's like a once a year sort of a splurge thing for me, like maybe at my birthday or Christmas time, or perhaps in a Black Friday sale or something like that. So I'm really excited to be able to knit that pattern out of this yarn and to be able to kind of give a assessment for how it goes. I know it's not going to be as luxurious and beautiful because this is very inexpensive. It's normally $5 a ball. I got it for less than $2 a ball yarn. I know it's not going to be the same thing as knitting it out of that gorgeous Knitting for Olive yarn. I'm fully aware of that, but I am very curious to see how it's going to knit up, how it's going to work up, and just see how it works. The other thing too is, like, I've never knit a garment out of cotton yarn, and I really like that this is a cotton linen blend. I just think that's really cool. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. And I know it's going to be different because the original pattern was knit out of a merino cotton, or a wool and cotton blend, and so it's going to be a completely different situation. I know that cotton and linen don't have the recovery that wool does, but yeah, I'm definitely going to keep notes and see how this goes, see how it wears and all of that. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure how long this video is. I think it's been about 30-something minutes. But yeah, I'm very, very curious to know what your opinions are on it. And I'd really like to know what your, I don't know, cause is when it comes to knitting patterns. Is it size inclusivity? Is it budget-friendly yarns? Is it something else entirely different? Like, what is your thing that really matters to you and really makes a difference and really impacts how you I guess how you would approach, like, whether or not, goodness, my words are getting all muddled up, how you decide whether or not to purchase a pattern. I know for some people, if it doesn't have enough sizes, they would never purchase it. That's not a huge factor for me. I'm very, very familiar with clothes not fitting correctly or not fitting at all and having to make loads of modifications. Like, I'm very aware of that. That's pretty much the main reason I got into sewing and into knitting, was because my body shape just does not fit the standard mold. I have a bust and then a waist and then large hips. Like, they just don't make clothes that flatter my body shape very well, or at least inexpensive ones. I'm sure at the higher end hoity-toity fashion brands probably have something, but again, I don't have the budget for that. So that was why I started at like 15 learning how to sew my own clothes, because I was so sick and tired of having to go to the store, and I would go with my sisters and I would try on a dozen different things and come away with nothing, and they would try on 3 things and come away with those 3 things able to purchase them. And it was just so frustrating to me because I'm very curvy shaped, and it just drove me insane. And so that's what got me into sewing in the first place. So I'm very, very familiar with things not fitting and having to make a lot of modifications to get them to work. That's a big part of the sewing process for me. And so I understand, I totally understand why people want patterns to be size inclusive, but it's just not a higher priority on my list. I think that's a lot of that is just because I've always approached sewing, especially, but sewing and knitting, with the mindset that if something doesn't work, I'll just change it for myself. And so I think that plays into it, that it's not as big of a deal for me because that's how I've always looked at it. I don't expect things to just fit right out of the package. But yeah, and it's just something that I realized within the past few days, that it's been like slowly kind of sitting there in my brain, that it kind of annoys me when people use very expensive yarns to make things that I can't get my hands on. I could never afford to use for all of my different projects because, and yes, I totally agree. There's a lot of yarn here. This is the first time I've properly bought yarn in quite a while. I've had a few times where I've purchased 1 or 2 skeins here and there. And this is probably like $150 worth of yarn. But the difference is that instead of that being for 1.5 projects, this is for like 10 different projects. So that's where the difference is, in my brain at least. But yeah, I still feel a little bit like on edge and stressed out, and I hope that I haven't like mortally offended anybody. Yeah. I'm very, very curious to have a conversation, to know what you think, and I would love to know, you know, what are your favorite yarn substitutions for a fingering weight and mohair. I would love to know that because there are some beautiful patterns out there that use those too, and I would love to knit them, but I need to figure out substitutions for that. So if you have any recommendations, if you're in the US and you know places where you can get inexpensive mohair that maybe I could try out, that would be amazing. Yeah, and again, I would love to know what your cause is when it comes to knitting. You know, what is this thing that matters a lot to you? Is it a really simple pattern that doesn't have much texture or detailing to it? It's just a well-written pattern that's very simple and beginner-friendly. Yeah, I don't know. I've just been really curious to find out. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end things here. Thank you so much if you have listened all the way through this whole chat. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out and spending time with me. I really, really appreciate it. I am hoping to do more of these sorts of knit and chat. I know this one wasn't exactly a proper knit and chat, if you will, since I didn't really knit most of the time. But I am really hoping to do a few more of these. I think it would just be a lot of fun. And yeah, again, I like the idea of making videos that don't have to have a finished product in every single one. Because I don't know about you, but I am not that, I don't know, productive. I don't push myself to always have a finished garment every single week. Like, it's just not gonna happen. That's not where my priorities are. I have a lot of crafts that I love to do. I have a husband that I love to take care of. I have myself that I love to take care of. And a house and lots of other things to work on. So making sure that I have 16 finished knitting objects every single podcast episode isn't a huge priority for me. But yeah, anyway, I'm gonna keep talking here if I don't end it. So thank you again for spending time with me, and I will talk to you very, very soon on the next one. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.